Wait, Carl, do that again.
I don't think I can.
Wait, no, say that. 1600, baby.
Goes to 1600. Look, goes to 1600. 1600.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the intro. So hey, what's up, Street Talks? Eric from the Eric Street Photography blog. Here with my very good friend Karl Edwards. Carl,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
So, Carl, tell us your life story.
Well, I was born a coal miner's daughter. My life story is it's a weird one, I guess.
You don't have to share all the details. If you
Well, I don't care. You know what?
Okay.
It's part of who I am. So, there's everyone has sordid bits in their past. I studied. I went originally to study business school, and then in first year of business school, we had a project where we had to create a fake product. It was 1984, so we created Victory cigarettes. And we had to create an advertising campaign. I had a camera. I decided to take the pictures and immediately realized that I'd done the wrong thing by going to business school. So I stopped that, took a year off, and then went and studied photography at Ryerson. Got my degree in photography, not doing street photography. I was doing like large format urban landscapes and environmental portraits and things that are very different from what I do now. Got out of school, went bankrupt, stopped taking pictures for 25 years. And then slowly found my way back into an industry where I could make a living with a camera. See how I did that? And then up until 3 years ago, when I literally, for the first time, it seems, discovered street photography, and it just sort of changed my entire outlook on life. I redevoted myself to the pursuit of creating images. And that's really been the focus of everything I've done for the past 3 years now. Even starting the new website, StreetShootr.com. Which is news, reviews, and information for street photographers.
So it's essentially I always go to that site. I always go to StreetShootr because I don't even know what's going on. And like tell us about like how you curate all these different stories for a StreetShootr. Like what's a day in the life of Karl Edwards and StreetShootr
I wake
or
up.
StreetShootr.
I wake up the crack of dawn. Yeah, StreetShootr.
StreetShootr.
It's like
Or
Tumblr.
R, yeah.
R.
Click R.
But you can type in StreetShootr; it'll go there as well with an E.
Ah, okay.
But I wake up at the crack of dawn because I am an old lady, and the first thing I do every day is I go through all the websites that I follow and sort of pick up what's happening in the photography world. If there's new things to look at, new videos or news about new products, and so I sort of anything that interests me, I post on StreetShootr. What's happening is originally the site was like curated news stories where I would find something was happening somewhere, report on it, and then comment on it. But more and more what's happening is I'm writing my own content. And it's becoming more of like not prose so much as just creating new content for the world that isn't just saying someone else said this, right?
Because I think when you initially started StreetShootr, it was kind of more of like the
It feels like you're
petapixel.
making fun of me when you say that.
No, because it's well. The good thing is you have the domain streetshooter.com. But
Yeah.
it seems like when you started StreetShootr, it was you kind of the sense I got at like what you mentioned. It was kind of more like the petapixel for street photography. But
Well,
now,
if I was doing a pitch a year ago, I would have said it's the petapixel for street photography. Because why not? It's a really successful model.
yeah,
But as it turns out, it's not really something that was enriching my life. Like we met up at the Magnum workshop, and the comment that you gave me then, and the site was just starting, and you're like, it kind of feels like a robot is saying this. You gotta put some of your own personality into it. And I was like, oh yeah, actually that's not a bad idea, right?
put some soul and emotion into it.
I can
Man.
say the word I when I'm writing, and it's okay, all right? Instead of this whole weird third party thing that I was doing before. So that kind of changed the direction of the site for quite substantially at the beginning. And then it's a battle. I still have I want to make a living from doing that from StreetShootr, and it's not there yet. It's still 3 years away. But that's a business plan, is what this is called, right? It's
Wait.
slowly building traffic and.
Wait, so before I talk more about StreetShootr, so backstepping, how did you first I guess, quote, unquote, discover street photography, and kind of like what really clicked about, I mean, because I mean, obviously, you know, you went to photography school, and I'm sure you studied Henri Cartier-Bresson and
No,
Klein and all
I
these
really
people.
didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
If
Oh,
I
interesting.
think back, my head was so far up my zone system ass in university that I don't recall anything about street photography in 4 years of post-secondary education.
So for people who don't know what the zone system, what is that?
Oh, it's like Ansel Adams, large format photography. You know what? It's funny. What zone system is there was a thing with HDR a couple years ago, and it still sort of happens, where you cram as much information as possible. In the old days, you would use the zone system for doing that. You would know your film basically had 7 stops of dynamic range, and depending on the scene, you could under process your negatives and over process your prints to sort of cram as much information as possible. If you've ever seen an Ansel Adams print, whether you like his style or not, they're magnificent. Considering that they're printed on silver gelatin paper, they're absolutely beautiful, beautiful images, right? So that was what it was. It was about controlling the process and being that kind of like walk around with. I almost bought a photos vest one time and I stopped myself just in time.
But then you could look like Bruce Gilden.
Right, that would be so worth it. Yeah, so I discovered street photography quite by accident. I had been shooting weirdly, like weird details of like the city streets around me, whether it was like pothole covers or this, and eventually I started pointing it at people, and I would walk around with the camera sort of around my neck, going like, doo 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 doo, no one can see me taking their picture.
Oh, like shooting from the hip.
But it was shooting from
Oh,
the
there's something beeping in the background. What's
I
that?
know. I've got to break away for a second. Hold on. Oh, remember what I said I was doing when we started?
Oh yeah, you're cooking a sausage.
That's right. The sausage is done.
Excelente.
That's terrible timing. What? There we go. All right, I am back.
Oh, okay.
That's the hottest exit ever.
That's pretty good.
Did you see it? So yeah, I was doing all that. I didn't even realize what I was doing. But then I would like take trips to New York just to do that. I'd spend 2 or 3 days doing it, and then at somewhere around that same time, I stumbled across your site and ended up hooking up with your workshop.
Oh,
You
okay.
know? And I'm telling you, up until the very last minute of attending that workshop, because remember, there was a family thing. I missed the first night. The very last minute, I almost didn't come. It's almost like,
Yeah.
can't do this, right? And I had picked up a Fuji X100S, and it was like, oh, this is like a Leica, right? Much like the Leica.
Oh yeah.
It's funny, right? Because I have this, and everyone sees me with this camera,
Yeah.
and you can tell a photographer because the photographer's like, nice camera. Whereas lay people or civilians just kind of look at it like, why has he got that weird camera? But people will be like, oh, you must have a lot of money because you have a Leica. And my answer's the same every time. Nope, I used to have a lot of money. Now I got this. So anyway, I took your workshop and proceeded on taking like 4 or 5 workshops in the next 18 months.
So what other workshops did you attend?
I did your advanced one. I did Alex Webb. I did Costa Manos. I did who's that other guy? John Free. I did a walking thing with him in California, and I did Marcus Hartel in New York City. We did like a 4-hour walkabout, which was actually really helpful.
That's cool.
It was it's the workshops. I always find are best when you're just sort of talking to people and sort of picking up things as you watch them, right?
Like a more organic process rather than sitting in the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, so he taught me the idea that you can't hide in street photography, and it's not about quick darting movements. It's about a very slow, what's the word? I'm having an old lady moment. Graceful movements, so that you don't attract attention to yourself. And that's kind of carried over even to today, right? Where it's just you just move with whatever's happening around you and act like you belong there. And you rarely attract attention to yourself, right? So that's what I find anyway.
Well, so I think it's awesome that you've done all these different workshops. I would say, if you could distill everything you've learned or taken away from these workshops, like what would be your top tips or top lessons, things that you've you've taken out of the workshops that you might have not been able to pick up in, let's say, a book or YouTube or whatever?
There's two things. One, it wasn't actually said to me, it was said to my friend Siri here in Toronto when we were because we went to the Alex Webb workshop together. And Alex and Rebecca, when Siri was having her meeting with them, basically told her, just take interesting pictures. And it's kind of a thing that just sticks in your head. Like you're running around like, what am I going to shoot? How am I going to get a picture? Just take interesting pictures. Just relax. Go take some good pictures, right? It's a good thing. But the most important thing I realized wasn't during a workshop at all. I went to LA to interview Matt Stewart in January, and I was going to take his workshop, and it didn't work out. It couldn't happen, couldn't line up the dates. So instead, I spent 3 days shooting in LA.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm.
And it was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Like, just spending time shooting is so important. Whether you're in a workshop, whether you're on your own, if you're on a workshop, you get this nexus of creativity, right?
Yeah.
Lots of different people working on the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really helps. It nurtures your own creativity. But shooting, just keep shooting. It's the best thing you can really do for yourself, I think.
Another question to bridge off of that. So, what do you think are like some of the common mistakes that street photographers make, or lessons that you wish that someone told you if you started street photography all over again? Okay, Karl, this is what you should not do in street photography.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, we're getting into a whole theory lesson then, right?
Yeah.
Number one, it's frustrating sometimes when you see a lot of street photography and it's just pictures of people walking. I don't think being on the street is really a great subject. The simple fact that somebody's on the street. I think what's happening has to be bigger than the street, right? Almost to the point now where I kind of think there is no street. There's just good photography. And we talked about this actually, like there's a crossover of that. Like I'm saying it one way, you might be saying it a different way, but ultimately, if you take pictures on the street, you can call it street photography, but you can take pictures of your doll collection and it can be street photography. It can have the same sensibility, right? It's good photography. Street photography has things about it. It has the candidness. But I think for me, and I don't think I'm a great street photographer. I think I'm slightly better than average when it comes to street photography. But my perception of my own work changed when I stopped taking pictures of people and started taking pictures of the things they were doing. So it was events, it was places, it was the interactions. It wasn't, ooh, look at that guy with a goofy hat. Sometimes you can't help it, right? But when I stopped taking pictures of characters, a couple things happened. My photography started getting better, and I stopped having people confront me a lot more. If you're taking a picture of something that's happening, whether it's two people talking to each other or walking a dog or a girl pointing at, you have to have that baby's arm pointing in the, whatever the case is, I find that it just became a lot more interesting. And if we're on that idea of take interesting pictures, how many more pictures do we have to see of people just walking before we're like, oh, okay, maybe there's something better we can look at today, right?
So I don't. I think we had this conversation before, but like talking about cliches in photography and street photography. To you, what is a cliche, and is that necessarily a bad thing?
Well, you can't help yourself sometimes, though, can you? It's gonna happen, right? For me, it's old ladies. I'm gonna take a picture of an old lady every single time. For other people, it's the balloon replacing the person's head in the frame, right? I think cliches happen when people go out and look for photographs that recreate something they've already seen. I loved when Matt Stewart did that shot with the balloon. The let's do a shot like that. Oh, look, someone's balloon. You're just copying an idea. You haven't brought anything new to the world. And that was the thing from Costa Manos, right? The photograph has to create something new. It has to show him something he's never seen before. And there's so many ways to do that. There's an infinite number of ways to actually do that without being like, oh, Costa Manos had the shot of the guy with the cowboy hat drinking a beer and he's in shadows on a blue wall. I'm going to look for that. Maybe if you look for your own vision of what's interesting in the world, we'd be doing better, right?
But how do you? Okay, so this is I'm playing devil's advocate.
I don't want to sound negative.
Oh no. So let me play devil's advocate for a second. But like, Okay, so there's like bajillions of photos taken nowadays, and street photography is obviously getting more popular. So how do you make an original image? Hasn't everything been done before?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It hasn't been done by me, and just because I'm completely like not just me, but anyone. Just because every single person is unique, your perception of the world, as long as you're being true to yourself, it's even if you try to copy someone, it's going to be a little different because you did it, right? But I think it's more intrinsically valuable if you try not to copy someone. Just sort of, hey, here's how I see the world. This is what I want to see.
Because I think sometimes you could shoot a cliche photo without even knowing it.
Uh
Like,
huh.
I'm the first person in history to ever have taken a photo of a guy jumping over a puddle.
Right. Well, how many times has this happened to you where even if it's not a cliche, someone looks at a photograph that you've done, you've been like, "That's awesome," and someone's like, "Been done." Well, so what?
What a wet towel.
Right? Has it happened to you? I've seen it.
Or they're like, oh, you're just copying Bruce Gilden or Martin Parr. You're like, I don't know even know who these guys are. But you kind of shake your head because you don't want to sound like you sound ignorant.
It's funny because one of the cliches, because I'm doing that, I'm working on that list of cliches for the website. And one of them is anything that looks like it's shot by Bruce Gilden, even if it was shot by Bruce Gilden. It's kind of a cliche. So he's kind of worked himself out of existence now.
Well, I mean, even Bruce Gilden. I mean, essentially, because when I started shooting the Flash, of course, I saw Gilden's video on YouTube, and I was, essentially copying him. And people are like, oh, you have no originality, you're just copying him. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks. I am just copying him. But then, I did some research on Gilden. He was deeply influenced by Lisette Model, and
Yes.
one of the first female street photographers who shot really close with wide-angle lenses at very low angles. And so, he was essentially copying, and you look at Ouija and all these other old school guys who shot with the Flash. So Gilden wasn't the first person to shoot with Flash. And I think the thing with originality and creativity and stealing is that, everyone either consciously or subconsciously gains influences from other people. But I think always the challenge is how can you draw inspiration from someone else, but also kind of make it unique in your own?
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's an example. Jack Simon. For like the past, honestly, no, I absolutely love his work. I love what he's doing. I respect him. But there was a period for like 6 months where I was like, I don't know. I see his stuff on Flickr. I'm like, I have no idea what he's doing. Like, I don't know what these are. I don't know how these pictures come together. Then suddenly he put them together as a body of work, and it clicked to me. Like, he's photographing people in space. He's photographing them in a three-dimensional environment, and the three-dimensionality of their space is as much a part of my enjoyment as the person or what they're doing, right? And that's something that's stuck with me for like a month and a half now, where it's like I'm looking for places, I'm looking for environments, worlds that can be represented as photographs, right? It's something that I'm not trying to copy a Jack Simon photograph, but now I'm going, hey, wait, the three-dimensionality of the physical space actually matters in the final product. It's not just about the expression or the moment. There's another thing that's going on. It's like that thing with that I always talk about with Alex Webb, where people are like, "Ooh, layers," right? I don't think it's layers. Layers implies two-dimensional elements sliding on top of each other, and what he's doing is composing in three-dimensional space. Slightly different than what Jack Simon's doing, I think. And I'm speaking out of turn because Jack might be like, "You're crazy. That's not what I'm doing at all." That's just what I'm seeing there. But it's funny because we try to simplify it into things that we might be able to replicate. Oh, layers! I've got layers in my photo, and I think it's way more complex. I think Alex Webb is a wizard. He would be burned at a stake if this was Salem. But no one can do what he does. But it's that kind of knowing how to put things together in a three-dimensional frame that is really spectacular for him.
Well, so at the moment, who are some other photographers or street photographers that you particularly are inspired by, and how has their work influenced the way you see your work or the way you see the world?
Oh, that's not fair. I didn't know there'd be math in this test. There's not a lot of individual photographers right now. There's a number of photographs that really inspire me. and there's a lot of people that I watch on Flickr, and I don't want to go into them because it seems weird, right? Oh, I'm sort of trolling this person or I'm trolling that person, but there's not a lot that you put me on the spot. I can't come up with something. I'm sorry, I fail, teacher.
Or so okay, so like how about name 3 photos that come to mind that you find is absolutely amazing or breathtaking?
3 photos on the spot.
Don't think about it too much. Just quickly. Three photos.
Can we edit this out?
Or three street photos you like.
Three street photos I like that aren't mine.
That aren't yours.
You put me on a spot. I think I'm blushing.
Okay, how about one? Choose one. You can choose one.
Just one. You want me to come up with just a single image?
Not to say this is your favorite image. Just one image that you think is a really good photo, and tell us, why you like this image.
Well, I mean, you can't go wrong with something like Border Crossing from Alex Webb. With the helicopter and the flowers in the field, the people crossing the border being arrested, and it's for me, it's little things about that photograph that stick with me. It's the one guy's hand is in the air and the helicopter rotor blade is like almost touching it, and that little moment there is like the Sistine Chapel and God's finger and Adam, right? It's like that microscopic space, and everything exists in that space. That's one that comes right to mind, right? There could be, if I sat down and started going through some Magnum stuff, I would come up with some more. But honestly, it's funny. I'm wondering why I'm stumbling with this, but I think I don't carry things like that with me typically. I can sit down, like, I love that book from Tractor Boys, right? There's a body of work that I find really lush, and I can kind of look at it over and over. Or anything from Trent Park is really easy for me to get into. But I don't walk around going, I like this. I just sort of, I can sit down, I can appreciate them, and try and just enjoy them without actually really knowing why I'm doing it or how I'm enjoying it, right? So yeah, I'm so above being into photos. I couldn't possibly come up with something on the spot.
Okay, so transitioning. So this is okay. So 2-part question. So first of all, why do you shoot street photography, and why do you run StreetShootr?
Okay. To answer why I shoot street photography, you have to understand why I carry a harmonica in my street photography bag.
You carry a harmonica in your street
photography
bag?
I carry a harmonica with me everywhere I go.
You're like a douchebag hipster.
It's worse than that. Have you ever tried to play a harmonica?
Yes, I have.
It's fiendishly difficult to do. There are notes that are missing on the harmonica that just don't exist. And the only way that you can get them is by bending your throat and positioning your tongues in certain ways so that you create a different kind of mechanism by playing it. It's impossible. It's fiendishly difficult. But it doesn't stop me from trying. Street photography is the same way for me. It's just out of my reach. It's very, very difficult, but I still want to participate in it, even though it's out of my reach. And it's the same, like, a weird example, right? It's going to sound odd. Oh, Carl's got a harmonica in his bag. And also, but anyways. So that's why I shoot street photography. When you get it, when you hit a shot, the reward is really great. It's very satisfying to me to look at something that I shot that's close to something I would want to look at. And it doesn't happen very often. The experience of being out on the street, I'm learning more and more to enjoy that. A year ago, I wouldn't have. I would have been like, get me home. I want to shoot, get home. Now I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is an experience that I can it's a lush part of the world that I'm experiencing that most people never see, and that is contributing to my enjoyment of it as well. But ultimately, I'm a gold digger out there. I'm panning for gold, right? If you hit a mother lode, you're going to be really happy, but
most of the time you never find the gold, and it's but it's kind of enjoying the whole process of it.
Yeah, you're out in the sun, you got water, babbling brook in front of you. It's not the end of the world, right? So there's always something to be had. There's terrors in the night. if you'll quote Game of Thrones. But you know, you run into some things aren't entirely pleasant when you're on the street, but that can happen anywhere, right? As for StreetShootr, why do I do StreetShootr? It kind of seemed like the only thing I could do. Like it was the only logical thing for me to do next, considering my background in web design and management and my background in photography and you know, all the SEO skills that I've developed through all my other jobs. It kind of seemed like something I absolutely just needed to do. And I really wish it made more money, because right now it doesn't make anything. But I kind of see it as, you know, if I'm taking from the world in one way when I'm shooting, why not give something back when I'm sitting at my desk, right? Why not give something that other street photographers might find valuable? It's like a carbon footprint of photography, right? I don't know if that makes sense at all to you. Like, do you feel that you're stealing something from the world when you shoot?
Well, I think I don't feel like I'm stealing something from the world. For me, it's about giving back. That I appreciate all the gifts and all the blessings that have been bestowed onto me, and I almost feel like it is my duty to give back. Like, I mean, for example, one of the reasons why I started my blog was I'm very big into this idea of like open source knowledge and information. And part of that has to be with the fact that, you know, I kind of grew up I grew up pretty poor. I mean, more or less single mom working like three, you know, shitty part-time jobs like cleaning houses, waitressing, cashier, whatever, and, you know, just barely to get my ass to school. And so I was very fortunate in the sense that I had so many mentors, so many people who have helped me along the way. And you know, and I was lucky enough to, you know, I went to UCLA as an undergrad, and, you know, 90% of my tuition was paid by the government. And, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, of course, you know, a lot of things I don't like about America, and a lot of people things criticize about America, but the fact that, you know, my education was paid for it, and a lot of my formative years was helped by, you know, I went through all public schools. And so now I feel that as an adult, it is my duty to give back. And I feel like this moral responsibility, but at the same time, it's a great joy to give back to, I think.
Yeah. Well, you know, I spent a lot of time complaining about being 50 now. But one side of that is I spent 50 years taken from the world, right? So, you know, it's interesting to create something that is free with these articles and the different stories that I do, whether people get them or enjoy them or not. It's just an interesting thing to sort of put it back out there. It's a good place to be in, and it's hard. It's writing articles, you know. You don't just sit down and think, hey, poof, there's an article.
So walk us through, because you know, I run a blog too, and it's very difficult to write. So what is your writing process like in terms of like researching, coming up with ideas, you know, typing on the computer, editing it, and so forth? What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I have an extremely extensive Evernote system. So as ideas come up, they go into one of my Evernotes is called StreetShootr Article Idea Farm. So I just write them down, right? And then every once in a while, I'll just go through and be like, oh, that's something I've heard something about. I'll add a couple more lines to it. But when it's actually time to pull it out, it gets its own note. And I research on the web. I do whatever I need to do, pull whatever quotes I need to do. At some point, I'll create an outline for the article, which is usually just a 4-block, right? The intro, the main section, the conclusion, trying to get an idea of what my statement is, what I'm trying to say from each article. And there isn't always anything. Like if Leica's got a sale, I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm just like, hey, Leica sale's extended to June 30th now. But you know, it's just about fleshing out the ideas and reworking, massaging it until it's ready to be published. And that being ready to be published is usually about an hour after I published it. So you have to go back and fix it up and change it. I do a lot of editing on it. A little OCD on some of the stuff, but you know, whatever. You try and just make the best thing that you can make, right? And it's tough because you know, some of the stuff I'm writing here is factual. I just put up the interview with Jeff Goldstein, him suing the Vivian Maier estate now, and it's an interesting process because, you know, I didn't know anything about what he was doing until I had the conversation with him. And I've interviewed you. My interviews are like conversations. It's not like, tell me about point A. Now tell me about point B. We just talk, and I try and then pull a coherent article out of that. So it's a lengthy process to put it back together afterwards. I suppose there's probably a more efficient way.
Okay, so you just finished interviewing Jeffrey Goldstein on why he's suing Vivian Meyer's estate. So that article specifically, can you walk us through the process? And also for people who haven't read the article or don't know much about the whole drama with Vivian Meyer, can you maybe just summarize or talk a little bit about it?
Wait a minute. There are street photography people who don't know about Vivian Meyer.
Or no, less. I think most people know Vivian Meyer. Essentially she was the nanny who was shot street photography her whole life, shot with Rolleiflex, passed away, then became famous. But can you talk a little bit more about Jeff Goldstein and his role in this whole dramatic unfolding of events?
Well, Jeff Goldstein had the second largest Vivian Meyer collection, negative collection, going, second only behind John Maloof.
How did he get those negatives?
They kind of worked together. When the negatives, before the collections were formed, like 12 or 15 people had negatives that they bought from this auction, as I understand it. And slowly they sort of, Jeff bought some, John bought some, and then the last batch was this tremendous, like the mother lode, like insane, meeting in a dark alley, buying this stuff with cash, and they kind of went together. They chipped in to pick up this last batch of negatives. And so they lived peacefully, as I understand it. They both vetted the heir to the Vivian Meyer estate together, and they found an heir in France. Now, here's where the story gets interesting, because what happens is they found an heir in France and paid him for the copyright, so they were able to resell the content, resell the images, and or publish books or whatever they wanted to do. Now, Cook County in Illinois has since said no. This is a state issue, and that we don't recognize that heir. In fact, the only heir that would be appropriate would be Vivian Meyer's brother, who's no one's seen in 50 years. And there's some story about him changing his name. Whatever it is, he's disappeared. There's no death record. And so Cook County is saying, we're going to keep this open. No one gets the copyright. We are holding it until he's 100 years old, which would be 5 years from now. And they're saying, in fact, we're going to give it another 5 years in case he has any children. Now, there's no record of him having children. No one knows. So basically, they're holding on to it for 10 years. And it's kind of brought the commerce to a halt. Well, for Jeff, what he said was that it brought his ability to conduct business to a halt because there was no way for him to sell prints anymore. So he decided to sell his negatives to the Bulger Gallery in Canada. Stephen Bulger actually went to school with him back in the Ryerson days, and he's sort of the caretaker of these things now, and he's decided that he's going to make sure that they're preserved, and they don't go into a bureaucracy who won't know how to handle them, won't know how to store them, won't know how to manage them. They're basically his property now. He can't publish them, he can't sell prints, he doesn't own the copyright, no one does right now, so all he does is he has the property, he's holding on to it. So what Jeff's done now is his latest suit, he's actually suing the Vivian Meyer estate, which has no money, but it's sort of a preemptive suit in case Cook County is able to seize his remaining assets. And he's basically saying these remaining assets have this value because this is what it cost me to make them. And if you're seizing them, then I expect this money in return, is my understanding of what's going on. So it seems like a pretty fair thing, but it's an ironic turn, right? The guy who is selling all the negatives is now suing the estate that has no money to make sure that he doesn't get double screwed in the end, really, right?
Man, street photography drama, man.
It's street photography drama. Now, but the thing is, how many people are sick and tired of the Vivian Meyer story? I'm not. I think it's one of the most fascinating stories, and it keeps getting better and better, right? Like, there's just always a new weird turn. You can't make this kind of stuff up.
So, I just want to hear your opinion. So, why do you think Vivian Meyer shot photography? And if she was alive to have seen all of this unfold, what would you think her take on it would have been?
Oh, it's tough to say, but based on everything that I've read about her, I think she would be aghast. I think that this was not anything that she ever, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to step on toes on this one, right? But I think that her life kind of says that she wanted to be a private person. She wanted this to be her collection. She shot for herself. But there's still letters of her talking. There's letters that she sent to that printer in France talking about, these are good enough for other people to see, so let's talk about making some prints. So there's some sense that she would have. So there's a dual. It's tough. I think the world's a better place for having this, having had her work discovered. I think that the photography world's a better place for being able to look at this work, for understanding what she did. And in that interview that I did with Jeff, he had a really great way of describing it. And I don't have it in front of me, so I would suggest people go to the website. But basically, he was saying, there was sort of an odd surface with like a darker undertone to every shot she took. There was the reality of the oddness of what she was seeing, but then there was some sort of subversive thing that played on a different part of your brain in all these shots. And I think that's just nothing that we really see that often in photography. So that's interesting. Who knows why everyone glommed onto Vivian Maier, right? I mean, the work has merit. I don't think she's the greatest photographer of the 20th century. I've heard her described as that, but I think her work has merit. I think her work is excellent. But to consider her greater than Winogrand or greater than Bresson seems like folly to me. There's a group of photographers that are among the top photographers, and just simply say that Vivian Maier's the best. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a tough one for me as well. I think that a lot of photographers like the idea of our negatives being lost in a storage unit somewhere, and one day someone will find
them. They're living vicariously through Vivian Maier.
To a certain extent, I bet they are. But that's okay. It doesn't change the nature of the work, right? The more I see of Vivian Maier's work, the more I like it. When the story first broke, I was like, bah, I hate this. But the more it goes on, you know what? There's merit there. That she was doing something that I've never seen before. And I don't think she could do it today. With the climate of photography the way it is, I don't think you can walk through the seediest parts of town and simply take pictures of people, or walk up to children and simply take pictures of children. I think you have a lot more people challenging you, but that doesn't change what she did. It's like having a bank machine versus not having a bank machine, right?
So do you think street photographers nowadays have a more difficult time than street photographers in the past?
A different time. Difficult. I think it's always been difficult to do street photography. I think it's insanely difficult. It's the harmonica of photography. Is it more difficult now? In some ways, yeah. You can't just go and take a picture of someone and without them wondering why you're doing it. Photographers are vilified a lot of the time now, and especially with the idea of children, right? There was that whole idea here in Toronto last year where some guy took a picture of a child on a street corner, and the community gathered together and went on a hunt for him because no one's doing that around here. Wait, he just took a picture of someone. Like, that's not a crime, right? So it's a weird thing that everyone just does not want photographers in their face. And maybe it's the paparazzi did this to us. I don't know.
Moving forward a little bit, maybe away from Vivian Maier. So when it comes to photography in general, and maybe street photography, what do you think makes a great street photograph? Like, what are certain aspects or characteristics when you look at an image that really stick with you? Like, what is that like for you?
The things that really, I'm trying to think how to formulate this, because, Gildan said a good street photographer is one where you can smell the street. And I kind of think it's one where you can hear the street. And I don't mean car horns or babies crying, but there's like sort of, I don't know how to describe this. If I'm watching a scene unfold, there's a moment when the world kind of grinds to a halt, and that has a sound, almost like a special effect where it's just like, "Urgh."
That's the sound of street photography.
That's one of the things. Like, there's a dynamic, a new sense of the world, a new way of seeing the ordinary thing that I've never seen before. And I'm not talking about someone with some standing in a certain way, so the trees coming out of their head and making some. It's not that kind of visual pun, but there's this, like we were talking about with Maier. Going back, there's the sense that she was seeing the world in a different way that excites me. And you see it once in a while. It comes up on Flickr. Once in a while it comes up on my stuff. comes up in my friends' work, and I hate them for it. But it's not happenstance. Like when people do it, you can tell it happened on purpose, and you can tell you're looking at something that's different than anything else you've ever seen before. So that blows up my skirt.
So Carl, just a quick reference. So if you go on Flickr, what is your handle on Flickr?
My handle is Grown Up Boy.
So then, if people go to Flickr and search "grown up boy," do you have a photo you've taken that you've like what you described in terms of what you get out of it? A certain photo that you're quite proud of, and you think that it achieves like this sort of maybe transformation of reality, or where the world comes to a grinding halt.
You think from me?
Mm-hmm. So like one of your own photos. Not to say that you have to say like, oh, that's the best photo ever taken, but a photo that has that sort of sense and that meaning in that for you.
The one that comes to mind right now is Darth Vader crossing the street.
Yep. Our guy. I'm on your Flickr. I just faved that right now.
Yes, one more fave.
Yeah.
I still haven't gotten 99 plus likes on any image on Flickr.
It's good. Hopefully after this interview you will.
Well, I would have, but you know what happened to me last year is because I used to be Kespix on Flickr.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And at some point, Flickr went through and flagged my entire photo stream. There was one image way from like 7 years ago that should have been marked as moderate, and it was marked as safe. I didn't even know there was such a thing on Flickr. There was apparently a buttock exposed in one image.
Oh my gosh.
So they flagged everything on my stream as inappropriate and removed every picture from every group irreparably.
Oh my god.
So that was done. So I was like, well, I might as well go back to this. Now, the Grown Up Boy account I've had since 2005, but when Yahoo bought Flickr, they lost it. And it took me like almost 6 years to get it back. So it had been sitting there. I was like, I'll just go back to this now. So I switched it over to Grown Up Boy. But I would have had over 100 likes on one of my pictures if I had kept it as Kespix, right?
And then, and so going to that Darth Vader photo, so based on what you remember, I'm looking at it right now, but then what about the shot do you love?
It's a personal thing for me. That was a shot where I saw the Darth Vader guy. He's one of the guys that stands on Sunset Boulevard, and you take your he convinces you to take a picture with him, and then he asks you for a tip. And I saw him across the street, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. How am I going to deal with this?" So I kind of stood my ground, got the camera ready, and left it up to the photo gods whether he's going to walk in front of me or behind me, because I was standing at the street corner, and basically the light changed, and the world started moving like this, and I had just one shot to find a position for everything where it made sense in the frame, and miraculously I got it. I got, like, people are in focus, there's no overlaps, it's not bad, the little van kind of acts as a backdrop. I don't think it's the best picture I'll ever take, but the memory of the scene, the control I was able to exercise, and getting something, and there's a decent sense of emotion. The little furrowed brow, his little glove, the way he's holding his cape, you kind of get a sense of him as a person and him in his world, right?
Well, what I also love about the photo is that, like, I feel like it's a photo that the more you look at, the more small details. Like, I love it how his glove is holding his cape. I love it how you can see all the signage in the background, the one-way signs, the 5th Street, the guys walking to the scene. And I feel like as a viewer, I'm really there.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And the 2 seagulls.
Oh my god, that photo.
Also like 2 seagulls.
Whoa. Oh my gosh, that's like one of those photos that like you just like, and everyone's like, I don't get it. What do you like about the seagulls shot?
But look at them. They're going for a walk. It's awesome.
Well, all you have to do is put your camera on the ground and copy Matt Stewart and try to get this person's shot.
That was from knee height. I did not copy Matt Stewart.
Okay. Fair game.
Anyways, that's hilarious. But yeah, it's tough for me. The photos that I've taken for me kind of at a certain point cease to exist. It doesn't matter what I've shot. It only matters what I can shoot. Because I'm a photographer, I'm not someone who owns the photographs I've just taken, right? My photography is really a verb for me. So all I'm really ever thinking about is the next shot that I might be able to get. It's nice, this doesn't match with some of the stuff I've said previously where I'm like, I'm really happy when I get a picture. Of course I am. And it's nice to go back and say, yeah, I've had some decent shots there, but there's more of the world for me to see, and there's more of the world for me to capture in this way. So, these are just practice for the next time I get the chance to do whatever this is, right?
Um, to make things a little bit more emo. So, um, you know, we've been talking a lot, and sometimes all of us as photographers, we kind of go through ups and downs in our photography, and have moments of doubt, disappointment, low points in our photography. Can you share us a little bit about like maybe the low spots you hit in your personal photography, and I guess how you got out of those low spots and what you learned from the experiences?
Yeah, yeah. The I would say middle of last summer was a tremendous low spot for me. I had just come back from the Alex Webb workshop. I had gotten 4 or 5 shots there that were really good. I really liked them. But I came back to Toronto, and Toronto is not an inspiring place for me. It's very difficult for me to shoot here, and I spent 3 months walking around getting nothing. Day after day, it was just like, oh my god, I'm the worst photographer in the world. And the way I got out of it was starting to attend. I started to think about events that I could go to shoot, and it sort of came together at the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition, at the end of the summer, where I spent 5 or 6 days there shooting. And whether or not I got shots, there was 1 or 2 shots that weren't horrible. Whether or not those shots turned out didn't matter. It was about going and enjoying the process of shooting, looking forward to bringing the camera to my eye and releasing the shutter. That kind of got me out of the sense of worrying about what I was doing and worrying about not being good enough, and just being like, I do this for this. This makes me happy, right? So that would be my advice. If people are in a funk and they want to get out of it, just get out of the funk. It's really easy. Right? Take pictures.
But you're saying though that you're shooting for 3 months and you kept shooting and shooting, but you're still in a funk.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what it's like? Have you been like one of those where you walk like 5 miles and you come, your feet hurt, and you go and you look at your pictures, you're like,
Or no, the worst is when you walk 5 miles and you don't even take a single photo.
oh, well, it's digital, so you just somehow come back with 100 shots no matter what. Pixels are free, right? So, no, but I understand what you're saying. The brief bout I had with film again this year, there was like 2 weeks where I didn't take a picture. And my friend John, who's a long-time wedding photographer, he's like, you're just going to the wrong spots. Find something interesting to take a picture of. It's like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? So, again, back to events, back to stopping taking pictures of nothing and shooting things that are actually happening is sort of what goes through my head, whether or not it works, right?
Do you think as a photographer it's important to shoot every day?
No. But I take my camera with me every day. I'm prepared to shoot every day. There's time you can say, oh, you got to shoot every day until you spend February in Canada, and then you're like, no, I'll shoot in 6 weeks. It'll be fine. I'm not going outside no matter what.
Well, maybe you could use that time to hibernate and read photography books or watch documentaries. And because for me, a part of me kind of dies if I don't shoot every day, or I feel like maybe my eye isn't as sharp anymore. But I think as long as you're doing something creative every day, and I don't think that necessarily has to be shooting photos. It could be, processing your film or editing your work or, writing a blog post or sequencing a new series or studying a photography book. I think those are also things that help me when the weather's not so good and I'm just feeling too lazy to go out.
Yeah. Well, I laugh at your phrase, the weather's not too good, because you live in California.
It's all relative because, like, for me, a day that's like low 50s, maybe high 40s, that never happens, right? Like low 50s, it's like, oh my God, it's too cold. Like, I'm wearing my Nike Freeze and my toes are freezing.
California, smoke is a weather condition there, so you have your your share of problems as well. But you're making a good point, right? Like, it doesn't always have to be shooting. But the other thing is, you don't have to always shoot outdoors. Like, it's winter, go in the mall, shoot in the mall. They're gonna kick you out. So you just say, okay, sorry, go around and go in the other entrance and shoot some more.
That's actually a good strategy because like when I was in Singapore and it was so hot there, like it's the opposite problem, right? Like I would just go to the mall and shoot around the mall, and that was awesome because it's like air conditioning and like then you just act like a dumb tourist, and usually no one gives you that much grief.
Yeah, that's just it, right? I can't. Well, I guess I could if I was in Asia. I would be the tourist, right? Wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
But anyway, the one thing that happened this year that was interesting. I started getting some jobs to do event photography, where there was like Fashion Week in Toronto or whatever is happening, TIFF music, just going and shooting an event and seeing what you can pull out of that event was a real charge that I haven't done any time in my photographic career, right? That lady with the black shadow down her face came from one of the events I shot. And it's like, hey, stuff like that happens, right? Like you can't plan for that. It's an accident, but somehow accidents happen the more you try to make them happen, right?
So always something everyone loves to talk about gear. So you're flashing your little Leica, and then we talked about this a little bit before, but so you love black and white. You've been shooting digital color. You switched flip-flop between film, digital. Give us like a quick rundown of your your thoughts on maybe digital versus film. Why you like shooting with a rangefinder, especially the Leica, things you don't like about it, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, the Leica right now is the only option, whether I shoot film or digital, for this kind of camera, rangefinder camera. I'm really old school. I graduated in 1990 from photo school, so autofocus puzzles me. It seems to me that by the time I focus on something, I should have already taken the picture. And we all know how these rangefinders work. You've talked about it, right? With having the focus scale here and the knob on the bottom, so you can always tell where you're focused just by feel. You can zone focus. It's basically 3 different focus positions, whether you're at the hyperfocal or medium or close, and you can focus before you even bring the camera to your eye and get the shot most of the time. It's just a really quick way of doing street photography.
And real quick, can you be very specific about the technical settings you use on your Leica when you're shooting street photography?
Okay, well, I predate bank machines, so I don't use any kind. It's all manual. I don't use any kind of automatic exposure. On this camera in particular, it's sort of the sunny 16 rule, but I do have a light meter around here somewhere that sometimes, when it's cloudy, sunny, and you're not really sure. I have a light meter in case I screw it up, but most of the times it's one of 3 or 4 exposures, right? It's like a thousandth of a second, full bright sun. I shoot at ASA 500 or ISO 400 to mimic what I used to shoot when I was shooting film.
What aperture are you using?
F8 and a half. I underexposed this camera by a half stop.
Why is that?
I didn't like what it was doing to the highlights. If I exposed it properly, the highlights would clip just a little bit. You can see that. That weird shot with the blue wall and the girl with the red jacket. If you look at her forehead, it's doing a weird thing with the highlights there. And I find that if I underexpose by half a stop and bring it up in Lightroom, I avoid that a bit. So that's just a thing that I do. That could be completely affected. It might have no foundation in reality. I just started doing it and it feels right, so I kept doing it. So yeah, it's the thing. With bright sun, you're shooting at f8 at 1,000th, shades f8 at a 60th. If you really need a bit more speed, jack up the ISO and you can get up to 250th at 1600. I'm constantly fiddling with the camera. And it's kind of good to constantly be thinking about what your exposure is as you're looking around for your shots, because you're constantly in the mind of photography, right? But this being said, you look at something like the Sony A7S that's out with the shoot at 100,000 ISO, and imagine how much freedom it would be just to put the camera on auto ISO, aperture priority, and just never think about your exposure.
So why wouldn't you? So why don't you sell your M and get an A7S?
Do not do this.
Oh no! But if you could have started this all over and you didn't have Leica, why wouldn't you get a Sony A7 VI or something like that?
I would. You would.
I
was shooting with the M6 when I took the Alex Webb workshop. He insisted I shoot digital because I was in New York at a workshop. I was going to go and take the film in every night and get it scanned and take it to the shop. And he's like, just go. So I rented an M9, thinking, well, I can put my lens on it. It'll be the same way that I shoot with the M6. And I liked it. I got some good results, so when I got back, I picked up an ME, and then that went on, and it was a never-ending battle of Leica after Leica after Leica until I got what I got now. But if the A7S had been out then, I probably would have just gotten that. It came out afterwards. And now once you're locked into this, like I'm in the ecosystem, it doesn't make any sense to get out of it. Plus, then I'd be, the A7S with the Zeiss Loxia lens, the 35 millimeter Loxia manual focus lens that they made specifically for the Sony A7 series, has focus distance marking on the outside of the lens. It's made of metal. That combination would be exactly right, hit the ticket, right?
But then, I've shot with the Sony A7S. I actually really like the camera a lot, and I think it's just pretty amazing for the value. But I don't know, like, how do you feel about shooting with the EVF versus, just an optical finder? Because I mean, that's a hugely different experience, no?
It makes my head spin. When you hold the camera to your eye, there's a split second where it's black, and then it comes on. And I've never been able to get used to that. I normally see something happening and bring my camera to my eye so I can shoot it when it gets there. Right? It's like I'm done. Now I'm shooting. Well, I got to have a pause. So it would just mean changing my shooting style a little bit to account for the differences in the camera, I think.
And tell us your love affair with film.
You're gonna rub that in my face, huh?
Oh yeah.
Well, I blame you for that whole thing, because every time I come around you, I walk away thinking, "Oh, well, let's shoot film now." Film for me, film versus visual. If I'm shooting film, it's not so much that I'm shooting film; it's that I'm not shooting digital, right? When I learned how to take pictures, there was only film, so we had to know how to do it, and we became quite proficient at it technically. So I'm capable of doing it, but the reality is, things have moved forward. Technology has changed, and it's funny to think that film was once technology.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? The 4x5 guys were like, they're like, "Oh, I can't believe you're shooting 35 millimeter. That's terrible quality. I have blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And ultimately, I like everything about shooting film. I like the way it looks. It has a superior look to my eye. Black and white film, the way it renders highlights, the way that the highlights seem to glow. Tri-X has a look that cannot be duplicated by any kind of filter. Period. I've never seen it done. But it's such a pain in the ass. Developing your film and scanning your film. It's too hard.
So assuming you had, somebody processing and developing all your photos and scanning for free, would you shoot film?
That probably wouldn't work for me, Eric. I don't want no one touching my film, right?
What if someone did exactly the way you liked it?
That'd be fine then. Yeah, it'd be fine. There'd be no question. But the versatility of being able to swap ISO on the fly can't be traded. The thing that digital brings is chimping. I know you're not a fan of chimping. I chimp. I'm sorry, I chimp. But I chimp to check exposure. I chimp. Sometimes that Darth Vader crossing the street shot, the scene unfolded, everything passed. I waited a couple seconds, and I was like, I gotta look. I looked. Couldn't control myself. So it's now part of the vernacular. It's part of our vocabulary now. It's part of what we do. So I don't think that we need to. I don't feel I need to deny myself the ability to use it as part of my picture taking.
So your first love is black and white. Why color?
I'm a terrible black and white photographer. I am terrible at it. I love it, but it's very hard for me to go out in the world and see it as contrast instead of seeing it as color. Black and white photographs interest me more than color photographs. If I think of that photo above my desk here, the Larry Clark picture is black and white. I love the way the tones look. I wish I could do it. I can't. It doesn't stop me from trying every couple of years. But even back in school, I was always shooting color film. We shot the black and white. I did the zone system stuff. I did the large format stuff. But I never really got the results I wanted from it, right? So you shoot color.
All right. So kind of to wrap up this interview, I just have a few more questions. So for people who, let's say, want to start their own photography or street photography blog, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh, for starting a street photography blog? Well, think about why you're doing it. If you're doing it just to showcase your own work, do it. Have fun. Showcase your own work. If you're doing it to get your message out, you need a strategy to get your traffic to your blog. And whether that's search engine optimization or SEO or you're buying ads, you need a strategy to make that happen. If you're planning on making a living from it, you need a strategy for advertising, and realize that you're going to make a lot less from it than you think. It takes years and years to build it up to the point where it's viable, right? I think after 6 months of having StreetShootr around, I finally put ads up. I'm making a couple bucks a week. I thought I'm gonna put an ad up and I'm gonna pay my server bill. Not yet, but that's okay. That's a byproduct, right? Like I've never done anything specifically to make money, but money seems to follow the things that I do that are successful.
That's a good way to see it.
Yeah. So just be prepared and have your own voice. Like the thing you said about putting the word "I" in what you're doing. Don't just be a copy of Petapixel. Don't be a copy of Eric Kim's street photography blog. If you're going to do it, you're doing it because you have something to say. So say it, right? And if people want to hear it, then they'll come back.
Another question. So, Karl, if you could go on a time machine and, let's say, talk to your 25-year-old self and give him advice about photography or life, what advice or tips would you give yourself?
I'm 25. Let me think. I'm in third year university at that point. I'm third year Ryerson. The advice would be put that goddamn view camera down, sell it all, and get yourself back on 35 millimeter. I mean, some days I feel like I kind of squandered that opportunity of being in photo school because I was doing the wrong thing. I was doing what I had to do at the time, but it isn't what I would. If I had the ideal world, I would be all about walking the streets for the past 30 years, right? And instead, I've only got to do it for the last 3. So, it would have been just a little cuff to the head and be like, get your acting gear and do something that makes you feel good. Don't do something that makes you feel like you're doing the thing that you should. So it was a weird twist. I concentrated in photo school on like the really technically obscure, difficult things to do. Without ever realizing that it wasn't making me happy. So that would be it. That would be my big thing. I wish it was more. Wait, no. Can I change it and stop genocide or can I stop Ebola? What?
Or and also maybe just piece of advice you think that could have made you happier.
Happier or in general?
On top of it.
Same phrase, man. Just take interesting pictures. Like, stop worrying about it. Just find interesting things. Photographers have to see interesting things to take interesting pictures. And that's the trick, right? You can't just walk into nothing. You can't walk into night and take pictures of interesting things. You have to be where interesting things are happening. So I would sort of structure my life to make that happen, to give myself the opportunity to take more pictures.
And so you just turned 50 recently. So
no, not for another month.
Oh, you're going to turn 50. Okay, so
I'm still.
we talked about this when we were in Toronto. That you're starting to think more about your mortality and kind of like, let's say, optimistically, let's say you live to 100, right, with technology and whatnot. So let's say you kind of you're at the halfway point of your life. What do you want the other half of your life to look like? And I guess maybe, what are some regrets you want to avoid, like, in the next other half of your life?
It's interesting. I can't tell you what I sort of see it unfolding as, because I can't forecast it beyond that. And what's happening now is I'm sort of taking what I've learned in the first 50 years and using it to pad my way, make myself more comfortable as I move forward. Because I know I've got the insights to the way things work in the world now that I didn't have when I was 19. And I know what I want to do with my life, which is, create images and whatever happens, my life has to be geared towards my ability to make pictures. So whether that's working so that I can shoot on the weekends or whether that's, shooting so that I can work on the weekends, doesn't matter, right? But that's the only thing that I can really say on that. It's just I'm going to keep following what my plan is. You're getting distracted.
Oh no, Cindy.
Cindy, I've never seen Cindy.
Do you want to come to the camera?
I'm wearing my pajamas.
Oh, that's okay. I'm you wanna say hello? This girl.
Oh, hi.
Hello. How are you?
I'm actually doing an interview with Carl. What's I'm wrapping up the interview. What is one interview question you want to ask Carl?
No, I have no idea.
Huh? Oh, we're just doing an interview.
Yeah,
No, it's okay.
I don't know what you.
Oh no, we're last questions. Like
Yes.
anything you want to know about Carl, besides the typical anything about street photography.
No. You're putting you.
It's okay. You're just like a tiny little thumbnail in the background. But you could. This is my friend Carl.
You're gonna be in big trouble later, Eric.
It's okay. No, I'll do an interview with Cindy in the future.
Yeah, we'll do
Yes.
a three-way Skype.
Okay, that sounds
Awesome.
good. Yeah, and also maybe just so some quick recommendations for any photography books you recommend people,
Oh,
just off the top of your head.
what was the one? I've been big on something recently. You know, it's that my big one is I keep going back to Tractor
Tractor
Boys,
Boys, okay.
by Lars Kundry.
Yeah.
What is it, dude? I am huge on Larry Towell at the moment.
Okay.
And View from his front porch book. This one. I like, and it's funny. He's coming to do a workshop here in Toronto next week.
Oh, cool. Are you gonna?
World from my front porch.
Yeah.
And here's what I love about it. He uses like historical documents and ephemera that literally frame his own work in the book. Like his work's in the middle, and his work is really amazing. It's Canada's only member of Magnum. But I'm really fascinated with him right now. It's all, anyways. Larry Towell, do it, Larry Towell.
Are there any contemporary street photographers you recommend people check out?
Contemporary, like trend.
Like that, or people on the interwebs, or whatever you want it to be.
No, I don't have anything handy. I can give you a list later.
Okay, or just.
I don't do good with these questions.
Or how about one photographer on Flickr?
Okay, I gotta go to Flickr then. Hold on. People, edit this out.
No, this is all being included because I'm so bad when it comes to this kind of things.
It's terrible, right? This guy Hirhun.
How do you spell his name?
Hirhun. Oh, this is terrible. I'm on the spot.
How do you spell Hirhun?
It's like Hirhun Hunchun, or this is gonna sound terrible because I'm not doing a good job with it. Someone who I found out from you as well, Magic Dakowitz.
Okay, yeah, Magic. I love his work.
Yeah, I really love his stuff too. Yeah, I can't find this now, Eric. You put me on the spot again.
That's okay. People could check out Magic's work on Flickr.
You keep doing this by asking me about photographers. There is no photography. There is only me.
Okay, fair game. Cool. And then last question. So, is there any question that nobody's ever asked you, but you've kind of wished that someone's asked you?
About what?
About photography, life, or anything.
Not really. I'm pretty much out there. Like I've got a story a minute, so it's not like I'm holding anything back, right? But no.
Or is there something that?
Are you getting at something?
No. Or just maybe like, because I would consider us pretty good friends, and on the outside, just kind of look like, just like a very fun, silly kind of guy. But maybe even something else about your personality, or something that, like people don't really know about you that you think people should know. Just maybe like a more sentimental or anything else.
Not really. Pretty. I'm a rock. I am an island. So, I like to think that that I am completely self-sufficient, and all I need is this. And all I need is my ability to conduct myself on a daily basis, but it's really not true. The part of the draw to photography is the community that is slowly building in Toronto. The fact that I actually do get to talk to other people and interact with other photographers, and we're slowly getting a group of those people together here. Some really great photographers.
Any Toronto photographers you want to give a shout out to?
You got to go to Fraction Street. Siri Thompson, my friend Siri. Jared Krause. If I don't say Neil Taw, I'm going to hear about it. There's a few of us that are really slowly starting to come together, and it's good. It's nice. It's nice to have a group of people that you can just sort of rely on, right? So